Imagining Halloween, Performances of Privilege, Oppression, and Social Justice. This lecture is a supplement to the article written by Dr. Jennifer Mueller called Unmasking Racism, Halloween Costuming, and Engagement of the Racial Other. Halloween offers us one day where people have the freedom and are in fact expected to transform into something or someone else. In the process of this transformation, one has to consider all the various ways to make that new persona come alive. But Halloween has also been described as a ritual of rebellion, where people can do things that they normally would find unacceptable, as if Halloween offers them a pass from responsibility for our actions. What is it you think about when you think about Halloween? Do you think about kids and costumes and trick-or-treating? By the way, the tornado over here is a costume that we made for our little one a couple of Halloweens ago. Halloween can also reveal our hidden biases, blind spots, and our privilege. I remember being around 11 years old and dressing up as a hobo and never thinking about it until the first time I prepared a lecture on Halloween several years ago. At first look, this kid is really cute, and his costume is incredibly creative with a cute play on words. However, these costumes also reflect our classism. It both reflects and contributes to the lack of empathy for the real people that are housing insecure or homeless. These costumes often include making people look dirty and tattered and something mocking their hunger. This allows us to remain distant from the fact that there are real people, real children, that are hungry, that are unable to wash themselves or their clothing, that are subjected to violence and victimization because they are considered throwaways in our society. Let's take this a step further. Let's imagine that this little boy and his parents are going to a Halloween party, and as they turn to go up the stairs to leave the subway platform, the little boy is face to face at eye level with this man. Do you have a reaction to the idea of these two people being face to face and seeing one another? If you have a reaction to that, just pay attention to what you're noticing. Now let's take it even one step further. What if he turned and instead of being face to face with this man, he was face to face with this child? Now the two boys are face to face, and our trick-or-treater sees a real little boy, just a few years older than him, living the life that his costume depicts, and the boy that is homeless sees the trick-or-treater. Do you have a reaction to imagining these two boys face to face seeing one another? If any piece of this feels disturbing when we imagine that this child is face to face with real people living the life the costume is mocking, then that is a sign that there is something profoundly wrong with the messaging of our costuming. How do you see sex sold at Halloween? What have you noticed about the Halloween costuming around gender? These are pictures of police costumes for boys and girls as young as 3 years old. The boy police officer has a traditional and fairly accurate costume. His belt could actually be functional, holding the necessary tools. He has a badge that's prominent on his chest and arm. His arm and hat are making his authority very clear. On the other hand, the girl police officer is wearing a skimpy skirt, short-sleeved shirt, leather boots. Her belt is not at all practical, and curiously, she's dangling her handcuffs in a way that if she were 17 would seem sexually provocative. The girl's costume implies that she should not expect to grow up and be taken seriously as a police officer, and the images also allow us to hypersexualize girls from a very young age. Hypersexualization of women is very common during Halloween. However, we have to ask ourselves, are we as comfortable with this also being the case for little girls? This is the brave Red Maiden costume, and it was designed after the show The Handmaid's Tale. If you're not familiar with the show, it's set in our very near future in the United States, where all women are brutally subjugated and fertile women, who are known as handmaids, are forcibly raped and are forced to bear the children of high-status men. After they deliver these children, they're sometimes allowed to stay with their baby in order to breastfeed, but at any moment they can be ripped apart from their baby and placed into the home of the next family that will subject them to rape and forced childbearing. This is the sum total of their existence throughout their childbearing years. The company said that this costume was designed to be a sexy version of the handmaid's uniform. And after some backlash, they did remove the costume and released the following statement. Over the last few hours, it has become obvious that our Yandy Brave Red Maiden costume is being seen as a symbol of women's oppression rather than an expression of women's empowerment. This is unfortunate, as it was not our intention at any level. Our initial inspiration to create the piece was through witnessing its use in recent months as a powerful protest image. So here, the company that created this costume claims ignorance and a mere miscommunication as the problem, rather than their hypersexualizing an image that's trivializing the inhumane subjugation of women that is the focus of The Handmaid's Tale. And notice, this is a common response when people or companies are called on issues of social justice and oppression. They claim they didn't know, they claim it was a miscommunication, they claim that it was just fun and humor, and that the person who has the issue is the real problem, not themselves. This picture was reposted on a page dedicated to raising awareness about sexual assault. His costume is a prescription medicine bottle for the drug Rohypnol, often called the date rape drug. The prescription is written for unlimited refills for Joe Blow Horny and has the following directions. 1. Give 2 tablets to attractive, unaware girl. 2. Await drooling, drowsiness, or unconsciousness. 3. Take home, bring friends, enjoy show. This man wore this costume in a bar and was then confronted by a group of women who wanted an explanation for his outfit. He brushed off their questions, stating that they didn't have a sense of humor, and he was later kicked out by the bar manager. This costume not only demonstrates a lack of empathy for the very real pain and suffering that girls and women experience when they have been passed a date rape drug and sexually assaulted, but it also promotes rape culture and the dehumanization of girls and women as a whole. Sadly, race is also commodified in many Halloween rituals. Here, these are real costumes that you could find today. This is a 9-year-old white boy whose mother came up with the idea to make him a slave for Halloween. She went through elaborate efforts to make the costume realistic, including theater makeup to make him appear to be black and to create scars from being beaten and whipped. He was sent to school barefoot, with a collar around his neck and his hands shackled. His mother insisted that she never meant to offend anyone and rebutted critics' claims that she was racist. Costuming allows us to dehumanize the people that are represented. I would also argue that in her effort to engage in this process of the costuming, she also dehumanized her own child. She never considered what it would be like for him to sit for hours as she coated his entire body in theater paint and painstakingly created fake scars to emulate lashes from being whipped. She didn't imagine what it would be like for her 9-year-old to be shackled and barefoot all day long at school. She didn't consider the backlash that he could face for her choice in costuming. If her own child's pain and discomfort were invisible to her, imagine how far removed she must be from having any empathy at all for the real children that his costuming depicts. This is a photo of a Mexican-American man dressed up as a Mexican person, immigrant, jumping over a border wall. So one, the portrayal of jumping over the border wall with a smile and a beer is minimizing the often treacherous journey and truly oppressive and dangerous conditions people are fleeing when they are trying to cross into the U.S. And it's also interesting that this photo portrays stereotypes about who these people are, and that it is a Mexican-American man who's deploying the stereotype, even though presumably it also affects him. I won't try to analyze what he may be doing, but I do have to wonder if this is kind of a performance art where he's working hard to create an us and a them, where he's distancing himself from recent Mexican immigrants. The elaborate time, thought, and effort that some put into very offensive costuming is really fascinating to me. But I'm truly dumbfounded when multiple people are involved and no one considered that the costuming was problematic or made an effort to stop it from happening. This photo shows some of the 14 teachers from an elementary school in rural Idaho that dressed up as a wall with the inscription, "Make America Great Again" written on it. The picture was posted on the Middleton School District's Facebook page on Halloween, but has now been deleted and replaced with an apology video from the district's superintendent, who called the costumes clearly insensitive and inappropriate. Seeing teachers in these types of costumes is damaging for all of the children of the school. 18% of the school population is Mexican. Imagine children seeing their teachers ridicule their families, perpetuate stereotypes about them, and use a symbol expressing a desire for Mexicans to leave the U.S., that they're not welcome. Of course, this is heartbreaking for those children, but don't forget the impact on the other 82% of the children at that school, who now have seen their teachers gleefully expressing this kind of bigotry and demonstrating so little understanding and empathy for their classmates. What lessons do you think they learn from that day? This photo shows a man dressed in a Border Patrol shirt and a woman with a baby strapped to her body, and her wrists are in handcuffs. The picture was reposted on Facebook as an example of costumes to avoid. Detained children were separated from their families, so in the real world, this mother would be separated from her small baby. We also know that children died in these detention centers, and we know that the parents of 545 of these children cannot be found, and they may never be reunited with their parents. Given this information, the photo here is even more disturbing and a demonstration of the lack of empathy we can feel and we can express when we create a group as an other and dehumanize them. Here we see a man wearing a face mask of the musician Chris Brown, and he has his arm around a woman with visible bruising on her forehead, her eye, and her mouth. And together, the couple is portraying the aftermath of Chris Brown after he had beaten and bitten his then partner, Rihanna. The image was reposted recently with the caption, "We will never forget, epic, LOL." This portrayal minimizes the prevalence and consequences of physical violence against women, where 1 in 3 women have been victims of some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. This man and woman are dressed as Adolf Hitler and Anne Frank. If you're not familiar, Anne Frank was a young Jewish girl who kept a diary while she was hiding from the Nazis during the Holocaust. Her diary was later found, and what made it really notable was she maintained this belief in the goodness of others despite seeing the cruelty all around her. Eventually she was found and killed by the Nazis under Hitler's direct rule. There's a cruelty in playfully pairing a little girl with the man that was responsible for killing her and millions of other men, women, and Jewish children. The other part that strikes me about this costume is the lengths that they take to make their costume crystal clear. After all, part of the fun of Halloween is for the costume to be blatantly obvious. So the man groomed his facial hair to reflect the way Hitler's infamous beard or mustache was, the swastika around his arm to make it clear. And the woman wears a dress with the Star of David and is carrying a black book where she put the words, "My diary," written on them. Only through all of these efforts does it become very clear that this is Hitler and this is the child Anne Frank. Together, these things make it clear what they are depicting and also highlights Jennifer Eberhard's assertion that objects become associated with history and with specific groups of people. Here we see two white men dressed up to depict the murder of Trayvon Martin in 2013. One of the men is pictured in blackface and wearing a hoodie with fake blood splattered near his heart, and it's supposed to be depicting the teenager Trayvon Martin. Next to him, the other man is depicting the then 30-year-old George Zimmerman wearing a black t-shirt with the words "Neighborhood Watch" written in white. And notice he's positioning his hand as a gun to Trayvon Martin's head. This picture showed up on Halloween just a few months after Zimmerman was acquitted for the murder of Trayvon Martin in Florida. These two were in Florida at the time. They lived there. So this is an image that was occurring during the height of the controversy and the dismay with the verdict. Additionally, this photo highlights the passive participation that surrounds Halloween, as this woman between the two men smiles for the picture and as such is passively complicit in the perpetuation of this injustice. Together, these photos highlight important points about Halloween and social justice. The effort to make Halloween costumes obvious leads people to exaggerate stereotype differences between groups, such as using blackface that literally makes white skin pitch black. By presenting such exaggerated imagery, it also serves to further dehumanize the real people that are depicted in these costumes. For example, Trayvon Martin is a caricature depicted here, not a high school kid coming home after buying candy. They're dangerous because they reduce our empathy for human suffering and they make things that are unacceptable acceptable. As someone who loves Halloween, I don't want to just throw it away. So how can we create Halloween traditions that then center social justice? Here are some pictures that suggest that we can actually use our costuming to promote positive social change. These girls are costumed to commemorate the recently departed Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, with hashtags to demonstrate that their costuming choice was deliberate to center social justice. Here we see generations of women dressed as Rosie the Riveter. If you're not familiar with this image, Rosie the Riveter was an iconic female figure during World War II. She represented working class women and female empowerment. These images remind us that we can focus on socially just costuming at any age. This final picture is from Halloween 2019, and he is one of 3 Black graduate students that came together to present themselves as the Black Panther Party. His shirt has the words "Stop Killing Us" on the front. And the goal of the costume is to link the history of the struggles of the Black Panther Party and what they fought to eliminate with the ongoing injustice towards Black people in present day, calling out the systemic racism and continued systemic oppression. Although Halloween has historically been a time to enact rituals of rebellion, these last few photos show that we can retain the joy in Halloween and potentially even use it as a ritual to rebel against social injustice. First, I want to offer a thank you to Dr. Jennifer Mueller, whose article "Unmasking Racism, Halloween Costuming, and the Engagement of the Racial Other" inspired and was the foundation of this project. Second, I want to say thank you to the graduate students in my Social Justice and Diversity course. Many of the pictures and analyses here are derived from our class discussions and their Halloween photo analyses. To those students, my experience in our classes has enriched me personally and professionally in my work as an educator, so I thank you.